Hey guys, and welcome to episode 1 of the After Show here on the WWE podcast. I want to thank you for joining me and subscribing because we're trying to make something a little bit different here for the show. The After Show here is going to cover a variety of things. It's going to cover a little bit of wrestling and maybe some extended thoughts on things I didn't get to cover in my normal show, but also talk about my podcast itself and how I can help you with some tips if you're looking at maybe starting your own show, because I have a lot of knowledge to share and I really do want to be able to help you guys. So it's an after show that covers wrestling because it's still the WWE podcast, but also covers a range of things that you would talk about after a show, right? You would talk about behind the scenes. You would maybe cover other topics that are happening in the world. And this is not, I want to be clear, this is not the After Dark show. The After Dark show is much more adult content related. Okay. So it's not that. It is a follow-up. I don't want to say spin-off because I think spin-off has some negative connotations to it. It's like a knockoff. That's not what this is. It's just an extension of the WWE podcast, but covering a other wide range of things and hopefully things that are helpful to you. And so I want to definitely dive into that. And, I guess I'll start with if you're looking to start your own podcast, because I have had many people reach out to me and ask, how do I do this? How do I do that? I'm looking to start my podcast. What equipment would you recommend? What host, like server, all these things. And there are so many different questions that I'm still trying to figure out and navigate. And I will say I've been podcasting since 2014. That was when I first started a podcast, not under this show name. I've actually had this show for about 4 or 5 years now. I was under a different name in 2014, but I want to just be able to share some of this knowledge with you, and hopefully you guys are able to take whatever this is and either apply it, don't apply it, ignore it, laugh at it, whatever. And ultimately this is trying to help other people that I wish I had a podcast to go to that was just straightforward and honest about what you can do to move your show forward and what you should and shouldn't do. And so here's what I'll say. Again, I've been podcasting since 2014, and I recently, in the last 5 years, changed the name to the WWE podcast, and it's slowly been growing. Like, this is not a avenue. This is not a venue that you get into thinking you're going to just have thousands of listeners off the bat. Doesn't work that way. Podcasting is an extremely crowded field. Know that too. There are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there for everything you can think of. And you have to figure out if you're willing to have a labor of love for years before you see any monetary return on it. So if you're going into podcasting, let me just say this, for money, get out. Unless you are an established a celebrity or a sports star, whatever, that already has a built-in audience that will follow you to this podcast. If you're just somebody starting from the ground and you're doing it for money, you're going to quit. And I'm not trying to discourage you from it, but if that's your motivation, you're out, because you're going to see such little return on your investment for a long time that if you're in it for money, it'll expose that need and that superficial need, and you will be gone. See, the thing about podcasting is that you have to know that going in that it's not going to be a bunch of money off the bat. And you have to understand that it's a field anyone can get into, but that's also the downside of, okay, the barriers to entry are really low. Anyone can get in. Why are so many people not succeeding? Right? And a lot of it is that you don't have a true passion for what you're talking about and your motivations aren't in the right place. So if you're looking at it for money, good luck. And I actually at the beginning knew, not that I'm smarter than everybody, but that's at least the one thing I had. And I'll tell you a ton of mistakes I made. Oh my God, so many. But the one thing I did have, which is why I've succeeded to this point and not given up, is that I knew I was starting from zero. I knew that I had no built-in audience. Nobody knew me. No one, right? Like, you have to go in and you are a nobody, and you have to be humbled enough to realize that going into this field. And through much work and just conviction and just saying, screw it, I'm going to talk about this even if nobody listens, that's how you're going to succeed. and you see little by little your audience start to increase, and you'll see dips and valleys and plateaus, but overall, month to month, year to year, you will see an increase if you continue on that path. And there's so many different ways to advertise your show. You don't just create an audio file and then just go, oh, well, that's it. I submitted to Apple Podcasts. I'm done. No. See, you have to create the episode, come up with a logo, maybe come up with a jingle. You don't have to do the jingle at the beginning of the show. Like I have one in most of my shows that I have to refresh, by the way. It's getting a little old. But, you don't need to invest all this money at the beginning with that kind of stuff that you pay people to do. But the advertising you need to do on the back end is also work. And you can do it for free. You don't have to pay Facebook or Instagram to run ads for you. You can do it on TikTok. You can do it with other collaborators, other podcasters that are small to mid-range podcasts that may want to work with you, and you can help them and they can help you. And that's really where I would live if you're just starting out and not paying any advertising dollars. Like don't spend a whole bunch of money on Fiverr or again on Facebook ads or whatever, because you're not going to see a big return on that. The best way is to create a solid foundation of listeners through your Facebook page. Create a Facebook page, create an Instagram specifically for your podcast, create a TikTok account. I mean, TikTok is massive. If you're not using TikTok, you're missing out. That kind of stuff. Do stuff that's free to advertise your show. And it's going to be a lot of work. People don't want to hear that. They think, again, people want to do minimal amount of effort for maximum return. It's not life. I still struggle with that. Like I sometimes just kind of phone in my advertising or my my promotion of episodes, and I see exactly the fruits of my labor, which sometimes come back to haunt me, right? Like you will get in exactly what you put out, right? Or did I say that wrong? You know what I mean, right? So just understand that, and I'm not trying to discourage everybody. This is not doom and gloom. Podcasting is fun. Podcasting is a lot of fun. I mean, the right now is the best part of it because I'm talking about what I want to talk about. After this, I have to edit this, create an ad-free version of it, promote it, that kind of thing. There's a lot. Post them to my website, post it to Patreon, Spreaker, put ads in it. Like make sure that it's on Apple Podcasts, the subscription version. Like there's so much that people don't realize that goes into this. I can create an hour-long show and I'm not done for about 2 hours in my office because there's post-production, and then you create, like little snippets of your show and you post them on Facebook, you post them on Instagram. And like the marketing part of it is actually harder than the actual recording. The recording, this is the easy, fun part. Me with my microphone right next to my face right now is the easy part. This is the part that we come for, right? This is the part that we want to do, is this. Being able to speak your mind with an audience. And that's what this is. And trust me, I don't think that I'm the biggest podcast in the world. I know I'm not. I barely hover in the top 50 wrestling podcasting in the United States. I think today, out of every podcast that ever exists, I'm like 2,000 something. Out of the entire the United States, I'm like 2,000 something. So, I mean, that's not an impressive figure, but I mean, I've made some headway. And so it's just through a lot of hard work, and people don't want to hear it. I know that people want an easy fix, an easy do this, or an easy way to get a bunch of people to listen. It doesn't exist unless you're a celebrity or, again, whatever. So that's the one thing I want to just set the expectation very real for you if you're looking at doing this. And, for those that aren't listening to start their own show, they're just listening for how this show began and all that. I had a love for pro wrestling. I've been watching that since 1997. I had a love for baseball, technology. And in my original podcast, it was kind of a hybrid of things. It didn't have a true direction. I talk about wrestling. I talk about baseball. I talk about, Apple, latest iPhone, whatever. And it didn't have a true direction. And I was throwing a whole bunch of money at it with like people paying people for logos and things. And it didn't, I was in the red every month, right? I was in the red with how much I was spending on my podcast, with hosting on WordPress and all that kind of stuff, like on Spreaker, where that was my home base. I was paying them for a monthly subscription, and like I was making almost no money. Now they host me for free. So like I don't pay anything for hosting fees because I've reached a certain level of downloads per month. But I didn't have a whole lot of direction in the beginning. And then one day I'm like, what? Why isn't there something called just the WWE podcast? And it just came to me. I'm like, here we are. Like, how does this not exist? WWEpodcast.com, the domain. How is that not taken? It was amazing to me. So I scooped that up as quick as I could and changed the name and came up with a different logo. And here we are, right? So, but there's a lot of nights that I don't want to do this. I have to say, even still, I'm so tired at the end of the day. And that's when I only have time to do it is after work, after being dad, after cleaning the house, after like all yard work. And this is the last thing I want to do. My instinct is to just lay on the effing couch and do nothing, right? Just zone out and watch Family Guy or something. And you have to force yourself. It's just like kind of an exercise plan, right? Like you have to do it when you don't want to. You're not always going to want to do this. So, there's so many things that I could talk about here where if you're starting out, for example, I would say find your niche, or is it pronounced niche? I feel like saying niche is like kind of a D-bag way of saying it, but that actually may be the right way to say it. Niche sounds so like, I don't know, pompous, doesn't it? But find your little sliver of an audience. Like focus specifically on one thing. Don't try to make a podcast about everything. And drop an episode consistently so your audience knows when you're going to have a new episode. Have a schedule. If it's once a week, it's once a week on a Monday night. Fine, right? Try to find something that no one else is doing, or if someone's doing something you want to do it better. And that's what I would say too. And you can come up with a logo. You could pay somebody on Fiverr for like $10 to create a logo for you. And definitely get yourself an Apple Podcast. If you're not on Apple Podcasts, I mean, you don't have a podcast. Like you have to be on Apple Podcasts. They are the largest podcast provider in the entire world. Okay. Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, radio.fm. There's a ton of them. Get yourself on everything. So that's what I would say off the bat too. And this is not going to happen overnight. This is going to be many months of you trying to figure out what the hell you're doing. And then eventually you're going to say to yourself, well, how do I make money? I'm starting to get a listener base. I'm getting, maybe 100 downloads an episode. I want to make money. Well, there's a couple ways to do it. And I'll tell you the couple ways I do it. Number one, it's Fiverr. Okay. I do host read ads on Fiverr. Like the ads you guys hear on Fiverr are the ones that like other podcasts are paying me to promote, or it's a supplement or a fitness program, or what, like you guys hear all the ads that I read. Those are from Fiverr. So you get yourself on Fiverr, or you can do something called programmatic ads. Now, not every podcast host has programmatic ads. Spreaker does, and I love Spreaker. I know they're one. And I think they might be the largest provider of programmatic ads. Now you'd be saying, what the hell's a programmatic ad? It's those are the ads that you hear about every 10 to 11 minutes on my show. They're not host read. They could be about anything from politics to health and fitness to whatever. Those are the programmatic ads that I put in every 10 to 11 minutes on my show. And honestly, those are the majority of my revenue. And it has gotten to a point where I almost could do this full time and quit my real job. Almost. We're a few years away from that. But, those are honestly where I make the majority of my income, are the programmatic ads on Spreaker. And you can actually start that immediately. Like you don't have to have a certain number of downloads to start on Spreaker with those programmatic ads. So I'd really recommend that you check out Spreaker. They're not paying me to say this. I'm just saying this out of my own experience. I'd really recommend Spreaker because you can make money right away. Now, you're not going to make a bunch of money right away. I would imagine if you're starting off in the first like 6 months, you're probably going to make like, I don't know, $20, 30, 40 bucks a month tops. It'll barely cover your hosting fees. But again, setting the expectation that you're doing this for a labor of love and the money will follow is what I've tried to, instill in you guys. But so that is one thing, and Spreaker has been really good. So that's the one thing I'll say. And they make it real easy to distribute your podcast. There's like an automatic distribution tab on your show. Again, I can, if someone's on Spreaker and needs help, I can help you out there because I've done everything that you possibly can probably do to promote your show on Spreaker and make sure that everything's optimized. And as far as money goes too. So that is one thing. Don't forget too, all this money you make is non-taxed and you have to claim it at the end of the year. So with the money that we bring in here on our show, I have to set, let me just say, like several thousand aside for taxes at the end of the year. And you got to remember that. So that's the other thing. But you can write off every expense that you have that's related to the podcast. Like if you buy a new computer and say it's exclusively for the podcast, you can write off the entire value of that computer. Internet fees, cell phone, if you use your cell phone to promote the show, any equipment, electronic equipment, if you want to buy a microphone, that kind of thing, that's all tax deductible. Because if you claim that you have a home business, you can claim also the space. If you have an office for your podcast, you can do that. And I do. So there are tax benefits to it, but you have to realize that the money you get is non-taxed. So now one last thing I'll bring up, because there's so many different things regarding the microphone. Forever, I had the microphone, the Blue Yeti, and I loved it. But I started to hear other podcasts that had better audio. And I'm listening to it, and there's a lot of expensive microphones out there, and there's a lot of them. And I went with something that's a little bit more high-end. It's called the Shure MV7. Now, the podcasting standard for like the best one you can buy is called the Shure SM7B. I wouldn't recommend it for a couple reasons. At least not when you start. It's expensive. It's like $400. It doesn't use USB. It uses XLR, which is like a different connector in the back that you have to get an adapter for your computer to use. And there's other stuff you have to get with it other than just the microphone. There's a boom arm. There's other equipment that has to go through the microphone to your computer. It's a whole mess. It's excellent quality, but it is not something I think you want off the bat. I would use a USB mic. Blue Yeti is like $100 and they're great quality. The microphone I have right now I think it was $250. It's called the Shure MV7. Excellent. I have no complaints about this microphone. So you can hear me right now. You can hear the quality of the microphone. It's the MV as in Victor 7. So I'd recommend that. But again, you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money off the bat because you're going to be just dumping money into something you're not going to see back for a while. So again, I would just say be conservative. Collaborate with other podcasts to build your audience. Create a Facebook page, create a TikTok account, work with people that will help you promote yours while you promote theirs. That kind of thing. That's what I'd say off the bat. Keep it simple. Don't get into the weeds too much because you'll get into the weeds soon enough. You'll overwhelm yourself with everything that could be done with a podcast. Keep it simple is really the best piece of advice that I could possibly give you. So this is just the first episode of the after show, guys. I mean, there's so much else that I could talk about, not just with podcasting, but other stuff going on in the world. I don't want to. I'm not turning this into a political show by any means. I'm not doing that. I'm still staying away from that. But there's other world events that are going on. The elementary school shooting in Texas. That absolute disgusting tragedy that. I'm sure if you haven't heard about it, I don't know what you're doing. That kind of thing. I don't know if I want to bring in world events, but that's what this is. And behind the scenes, telling you guys exactly what I've done to set up this podcast and the struggles I've had. And I can tell you about all the mistakes. I could probably make an entire episode about every mistake that I've ever made. And it would take up 10 episodes. So there's a lot of things I've done that are stupid, that I've spent my money on that I shouldn't have. But, I've obviously done enough right to get to a point where, it's a significant second income. It's not just a hobby income anymore. And it's definitely, it sounds cheesy. Oh, it's changed my life. It kind of has in a weird way. Like the income that's coming in from the show is something that we use to, do home project improvements. And it's not just it's rainy day fund. Like we actually depend on it to do things in our home. And it's just kind of cool, I think, I get paid to talk about wrestling. Like that's so crazy, right? I just get paid to sit on my ass and talk about wrestling. Sometimes it's weird to say that, but it's true. Now, it sounds like I'm doing nothing. But again, behind the scenes, there's a ton of crap that goes on. so that people don't see. And when episodes are late, I don't want to put them out late. I don't want to split episodes into 2 parts, but it's life. Life gets in the way. And it's a lot of time dedicated to producing this show and making sure everything's right and sounds good and all that stuff. So anyway, I want to welcome you guys. Thank you for joining me here on the After Show, the very first episode. If you want another topic to talk about regarding pro wrestling, something more in depth I didn't cover on my other podcasts, by all means, reach out to me at realwwepodcast@gmail.com. You can do that because I do want to make this wrestling focused too, because it's the after show of our show. So certainly if there's a topic, it's like, hey, let's deep dive into this, please send it my way. I'd love to talk wrestling on this show too, that I don't normally talk about on our normal feed. So thanks everybody for listening. As always, talk to you next time.